Right, so we are going to look at nephrotic syndrome. Now, it's quite important for you to understand nephrotic syndrome because it's one of those renal diseases that are quite common. So it's a syndrome like we are saying, okay, meaning that it is not just one disease, but it's a collection of several diseases. But those several diseases, they present with classical symptoms and signs, okay, and that's why we are able to put them. So all these, the group of these diseases, they are called glomerulonephritis. Glomerulonephritis. Okay, so that is the group of diseases. Okay, and they're different types, and that's why we're going to have two parts of this lesson, where we are going to look at this one. We're going to concentrate on the definition. We'll look at definition of nephrotic syndrome. Then we shall look at the pathophysiology. Okay, pathophysiology. Other than pathophysiology, we'll also look at the signs and symptoms. Okay. Then from there, we'll look at the under pathophysiology. I'm briefly going to talk about the causes, which are primary and secondary. Okay, I'll briefly talk about that. So that's why this part, the causes, this is where part 2 of the lecture comes in. But I'll briefly talk about them, but not go into details. Then after signs and symptoms, we're going to look at investigations, okay, and investigations also they'll link to that. Then we'll also look at management, general principles of management of nephrotic syndrome. So this is what we're going to look at, and under definition, I'm also going to talk about briefly the functional anatomy of the kidneys. All right. So this is going to be the outline of our lesson, and I hope from this, I'm sure should be able to understand quite enough of what is needed, especially now for this particular topic. All right. So let's look at the definition of nephrotic syndrome. So, like we have already mentioned, it is a syndrome. Okay, it is a syndrome. It is a clinical syndrome that is characterized by what is called a tetrad. Okay, so this nephrotic syndrome, it has a tetrad. In other words, there are four classic what signs and symptoms that are almost always there. All right. These four classic symptoms and signs, they are almost always there, or rather, they make up what is called nephrotic syndrome. Okay. So when you see a patient with these four characteristics, it is almost always nephrotic syndrome. And these are, number one, we have proteinuria. Okay, proteinuria of more than, greater or equal to 3.5 grams, okay, in 24 hours. Okay, so loss of proteins in urine, okay, of more than greater or equal to 3.5 grams in what? In 24 hours. Okay, then number two, we also have what is called edema. We also have edema. Now, this edema may be peripheral edema. It could be generalized edema. It can also be pulmonary edema. It could be ascites, okay, and so on. So I'm just going to leave it in general as edema. Then number three. Hello, are you there? Can you get me? Okay. Number three, we have hypoalbuminemia. Okay, hypoalbuminemia. Okay, hypoalbuminemia. Then four, we have hypercholesterolemia. then okay. So these are the four classic features of what? Of nephrotic syndrome. Under this one, we can also say on dipstick, okay, on dipstick, it is at least, or rather it is greater than, greater or equal to 2 plus, okay, because on dipstick you don't get the quantitative measurement of the proteinuria, isn't it? You just get the approximate like that. So that is nephrotic syndrome. So when you see a patient with this, and each of these features, they are going to give you other signs and symptoms. For example, the edema, like I mentioned, it could be peripheral edema, and it is pitting, okay, bilateral pitting edema, or it can be generalized edema and asaka. It can also be periorbital edema, which is usually worse in the morning and um, gets better as the day progresses, all right? Or it can also be pulmonary edema. It can also present as as ascites and so on and so forth. Okay. Then hypoalbuminemia, you can find things such as leukonychia and so on and so forth, right? And also tiredness, easy fatigability, because this person is not having enough proteins and so on. Okay. So in general here, instead of saying hypoalbuminemia, we can also say hypoproteinemia, okay? Hypoproteinemia, because generally we're talking about proteins being lost, okay? But the most prominent one is what? Is albumin, and we're going to talk about it, all that in a short while. Then we also have hypercholesterolemia, and this we're also going to talk about it and see. So that's why on this one we find things such as we're going to find other symptoms that are going to tell us about this. So let's look at the basic functional unit of the kidney, so that we lay a foundation of what we're talking about. So understand that we have two kidneys. Okay, we have the left kidney and the right kidney, like that. Okay. We have something like that. Okay, then we have ureters and so on, and the bladder here, and then the urethra and so on, right? So those are the kidneys. So here we have blood is coming like that, going like that. So this is the renal artery, and then this is the renal vein, isn't it? Oh, I mean this is the aorta. Okay, this is the aorta, and then this is the vena cava. Okay, the vena cava. Then here, this one, this is the renal artery, and then this one is the renal vein, one taking blood away from the kidneys. That is the renal vein. Okay. So now, when we open the kidneys, okay, if we are to open and look at it inside, we're going to find, we're going to look at the functional unit of the kidney, which is called the nephron. Okay. We're going to look at the nephron. So when you look at the nephron, we have what is called, we have the renal corpuscle and the renal tubule. Basically, those are the two parts of the nephron. So let's look at the renal corpuscle. So we have what is called the glomerulus. Okay, so the glomerulus is simply a coil of these capillaries. Okay, it is a coil of capillaries. So it comes, so from this side, this is what this side we have what is called the afferent arteriole. Okay, and then this side you have the efferent arteriole. Okay, so this one, this side is going to the renal vein, and then from this side it's coming from the renal artery, isn't it? So when it reaches here, it coils up, and then it forms what is called the Bowman's capsule. I mean the renal corpuscle. So the renal corpuscle is made up of the Bowman's capsule and the the what? And the glomerulus. So this is the Bowman's capsule, and then Bowman's capsule comes like that, and then forms the renal tubule, and so on. So you know that we have the distal convoluted tube, we have the proximal and the distal convoluted tube, isn't it? And then the loop of Henle. Okay, so let me just try to simplify it like that. So we have the thick and thin ascending limbs, and so on, and then it goes to the collecting duct, okay, and so on, until it goes to the ureter. Okay, now our point of concentration is really this part here. Okay, that part. Now, I want us to look at this part in a bit more details because this is where the disease process is taking place. Okay, so we're going to look at that part in a bit more details. So what is happening is that let's look at the capillary, which is the glomerulus. Okay, so the glomerulus, we have, let me put it this way. We're going to do this. So we have the endothelium, okay, the glomerular endothelium, like that, isn't it? So that is the endothelium and so on. Even have red blood cells, other stuff. So this is the glomerulus, isn't it? Then this glomerulus has what is called the glomerular basement membrane. So I'm going to put it in green. So you have the glomerular basement membrane there, on which these cells are sitting. Okay, the glomerular basement membrane. I don't know why my green ink marker is not working. Let me use blue. It's fine. Okay. So that is the glomerular basement membrane, isn't it? Then from the glomerular basement membrane, we have what are called podocytes. Okay, we have what are called podocytes. Now, these podocytes, they are cells. Okay, they are specialized cells. Now, the reason why I call them podocytes, they have what are called food processes. It's as if I'm holding. Let me. Okay, let me get something like this. Okay, so let's say, let me give this illustration. So let's say this is the capillary, which is the glomerulus, all right, and then inside, so this is the basement membrane, what you're able to see from the outside. This is the basement membrane, and then from inside you have the cells, okay, which are basically squamous epithelium, okay. Then from the outside you have cells which attach to this basement membrane, the way my hand is attaching like that. And then there are those finger-like or foot-like processes like that, such that even those spaces there. By the way, this basement membrane, it is fenestrated. Okay, it is fenestrated, meaning that it has small holes through which molecules can pass through. All right, and then on top of that, we have those cells with foot-like processes like this. So if this is a cell, and then it has those sort of projections, okay, some sort of projections, and so on. Okay, so that is a cell, and then it continues just like that. All right. So then after that, that's where now we have what is called the Bowman's capsule. Okay, so this is now where we're going to have the Bowman's capsule. So this is now the Bowman's capsule. So if we are to look at it, well, if we are to look at the layers, okay, if we are to look at the layers from, if we cut through like that, okay, from there up to there. Are you following? Okay, so you can see that the Bowman's capsule also has the parietal layer and the visceral layer, isn't it? You have the visceral and the parietal. So what we are saying is that we have we have this endothelium, then you have the glomerular basement membrane, the GBM, that's what it is called. Then we have the podocytes, okay, podocytes. Then we have the Bowman's capsule. Okay, Bowman's capsule. Right, something like that. So now, under normal circumstances, what happens is that uh, things like such as red blood cells and other larger molecules such as albumin, they are not able, because remember, when blood is coming like this here, by the way, there are also what are called mesangial cells. There are also mesangial cells inside there. Those mesangial cells, they simply help with more like contraction of these capillaries there. Okay. So now, what we are saying is that when blood is coming towards the glomerulus literally becomes a bit narrower, okay, compared to the other part of the afferent artery, okay, and that creates some sort of pressure. There's going to be some sort of pressure inside there, such that some of the molecules and substances, they are going to be filtered out. Okay, there's going to be filtration from the glomerulus, and those substances are going to be collected by the Bowman's capsule. Okay, so now which substances are filtered out? All right, so you can see that things such as red blood cells, they are not able to pass. Okay, they bounce, they cannot pass. Even things such as proteins, they are also not able to. They're not able to pass. Now, the reason why red blood cells are not able to pass is simply because. So when you look at red blood cells, okay, it's because of size. So the red blood cells are larger than the fenestrations. Remember, we said that the glomerular basement membrane has those small spaces, the fenestrations, isn't it? But they are not large enough to allow such things such as cells to pass through, especially the red blood cells. So they can't pass through. So that's why, under normal circumstances, when you look at urine, okay, you are not supposed to find red blood cells. Once you find red blood cells in the urine, it means that there's something wrong. Okay, there should be something wrong. So that is why red blood cells cannot pass through, because they are larger than the fenestrations. Then when you look at the proteins, okay, specifically we are interested in albumin. When you look at the proteins, it is not able to pass through, number one, because of size, okay, because of size. So albumin, number one, there's the aspect of size. So it is larger than those fenestrations, again, because of the charge, okay. Remember, these proteins, that is albumin, it is negatively charged, and then these podocytes also, they have a negative charge. All right. Now remember, according to the first law of electrostatics, it says that unlike charges attract, then like charges do what? Repel. So what we are saying is that because this albumin is negative, and those food processes of the podocytes, they also have that negative charge. So it means that, number one, excuse me, number one, if these proteins try to pass through the fenestrations are not large enough to allow them. Okay. Other than that, even if they were to pass through, but the fact is that these are podocytes also on the food processes. There is that what? There is that negative charge. So they are not able. They are being repelled. So once they try to go there, they are repelled back into the glomerulus. So this is why, again, it is not so normal to find proteins in urine. Okay, but things such as glucose, water, salts, and so on, they are able to pass through, all right, because the fenestrations are large enough to allow glucose, to also allow salts, to allow water to pass through. But those things, obviously, they are later on reabsorbed, but that is not our topic for today. Okay, so this is the normal process. This is what happens now in nephrotic syndrome. For whatever reason, for whatever cause, okay, which we said it could be primary or secondary, right? So there is going to be, yes, there's going to be what? There's going to be, number one, inflammation, okay? Where's my pen? Okay, there's going to be inflammation, and that's why this is called the glomerulonephritis. Okay, so there's going to be inflammation, and basically this inflammation is as a result of immune complexes. Okay, immune complexes. Okay, or it could be infections, and so on and so forth, right? So there's going to be that inflammation and also destruction of the glomerular basement membrane. Okay, so one, and also these food processes, okay, and the podocytes. Let me put it that podocytes. So what we're saying is that inflammation, and then that is also going to lead to what? It's going to lead to destruction of the glomerular basement membrane and the podocytes. Now, already you can see that what is going to happen is that, remember I said that this basement membrane, it has those fenestrations which are not large enough to allow proteins and what? And red blood cells to pass through. Now, depending on the degree and the type of injury that is there, if the basement membrane is also involved, okay, especially to a larger degree, you can also find that red blood cells are able to pass through. But most of the times, what you find is that the proteins that is albumin is now able to pass through because of that destruction. Okay, so this is what is going to now lead to what we are going to talk about. Okay, so that is what is going to lead to what is going to talk about. It's going to lead to the loss of proteins, the loss of there could be some bit of hematuria. Okay, so on those four, at the end we can also put plus or minus hematuria, because sometimes we can also find blood being lost. Okay, is that fine? Any question before I proceed? Yes, yes. Depending on the cause of the nephrotic syndrome. Okay, depending on the cause. So that's why we say that plus or minus what? Hematuria. Okay, so it's not always there. It's not something that you really have to look out for and say, no, because there's no hematuria, so it is not nephrotic syndrome. No, it's just one of those things that may or may not be there. Okay, so we have defined nephrotic syndrome and given the tetrad. Okay, that is one. There's what? There's proteinuria of more than 3.5 grams in 24 hours. Okay, and then we also said that there's edema. Then there's also what? Hypoalbuminemia, and there's also hypercholesterolemia, isn't it? So, and then we've talked about it. Okay, so that's where the hypercholesterolemia is coming in. Okay, because the most prominent lipid that is there is cholesterol. Okay, is that fine? All right. So I'm going to end this video here and then restart another one so that it shouldn't be too long.